Affirming Neurodivergence by H. Howitt. My name is H. Hello. I'm plurally neurodivergent. I have some innate neurodivergencies like autism and ADHD, and some acquired like CPTSD. I have some experience of mental health services, both inpatient and in the community. I'm going to talk about what a neurodivergent affirming approach in mental health care means from my perspective. In this presentation, I'll be focusing on 3 different areas that can help to affirm neurodivergence, and what difference implementing these might make on the ward. These are communication, the senses and sensory processing, and consent. But first, what does neurodivergent affirming mean, and why do we need it? I think it's important to acknowledge that this approach is needed because we live in a culture which does not affirm neurodivergence, and this causes us harm. The dominant culture pathologises neurodivergence, assumes we are a problem that needs fixing, tries to make us change to fit a neuronormative ideal, asking us to adapt to a world built largely by and for neurotypical people, positions us as an aberration or deviation from a presumed normal or healthy majority, rates neurodivergent people, in particular autistic people, on a scale that correlates our ability to act like neurotypical people with how well or unwell, high or low functioning we are. A neurodivergent affirming approach, on the other hand, is a cultural paradigm shift which depathologises neurodivergence, resisting words like disorder, understands the problems we face are often social barriers and ableist norms, there is nothing wrong with us, creates change by adapting the social and built worlds to better suit the needs of a neurodiverse society, assuming the presence of neurodivergent folks in all areas of life. Positions neurodivergence as a neutral biological fact, with our neurocognitive variants arising perfectly naturally to create a species that is neurodiverse, with diversity being essential to our species evolution. And does away with functioning labels and understands that support needs vary and are unique to each individual. An affirmative approach does not ascribe wellness or functionality to arbitrary skills that neurotypical people have decided are of value, like speaking. So, in a pragmatic sense, what can be done to help us move away from the dominant culture and towards the affirmative paradigm, particularly in the context of mental health services? Here are 3 areas that I think can help us make that shift. 1. Communication. Miscommunication is common among neurodivergent and neurotypical folks because we have different ways of communicating. In the old paradigm, it was assumed that neurodivergent folk are bad at communication, but we understand now through research into the double empathy problem that this is a 2-way street, and that neurodivergent folks are great at communicating amongst our neurotype. Autistic people can tend to take things literally, or, put another way, neurotypical people tend to tell small lies which they assume other people will understand, and most neurotypical people do understand. So when a nurse tells me, "I'll be back in a minute to take your bloods," I'm counting 60 seconds, and when he's not back, I'm confused and distrusting. So, communicate as clearly and accurately as you can, and explain what is going to happen, when it's going to happen, with expectation management built in if it's uncertain, by who, why, and if I have any choices. In all communications, it's helpful to be supported by plural mediums, written information with images and visuals, and verbal information that can be recorded and played back. A note on listening: neurodivergent people may not look like neurotypical people when we're listening. Some of us need to doodle, not make eye contact, stim, repeat back words, move around, or otherwise seem to neurotypical people as distracted. So please check with us how we can best listen and assume we're doing our best. 2. Sensory processing. Neurodivergent body minds respond differently to sensory stimulus compared with neurotypical people, and this varies across neurotypes, across individuals, and it can vary in individuals across time or depending on other factors. Having our sensory needs met can vastly improve our ability to process information. Conversely, if we have multiple sensory stressors, our processing can halt, leading to shutdown or meltdown. For me, sensory stress is accumulative. I can cope with 1 or 2, but on the ward there was so much sensory stress that I was frequently in shutdown. Senses include sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. Sensory needs can be sensory seeking or sensory avoiding. Sight. This may include light and lighting colour preferences, preferences or aversions to types of furniture, a need for order or specific room layout, or a need for total darkness. In order to help our sight sensitivities, where possible, provide multiple lighting choices, plastic filters or light shades, provide different colour lenses and glasses, assist in room layout, be permissive around ordering items and personal belongings, provide a dark room if necessary, turn off strip lights and overhead lights. Sound. Noise sensitivities include strong aversion to certain sounds called misophonia, seeking out certain sounds like heavy bass, not being able to distinguish multiple streams of conversation. In order to help our sound sensitivities where possible, provide headphones with noise cancellation and music devices. Soundproof where possible, such as using door softeners. If there are multiple conversations or competing noises such as TV or radio, check in and provide an alternative quiet space if needed. Touch. Touch sensitivities include seeking certain haptic stimulation like rocking and flapping, not tolerating certain fabrics or mouthfeels in foods, aversion to or seeking of certain kinds of physical touch. In order to help our touch sensitivities, where possible, provide weighted blankets, sensory swings and other sensory toys such as Play-Doh, elastic bands, ice cubes. Be permissive and affirmative of stimming, of rocking and flapping. Minimise unwanted and unnecessary touch. Teach us or our loved ones to conduct biometric measures ourselves where possible. Taste. We may have strong taste preferences, needing the same foods or safer foods, and difficulties with certain medicines. In order to help our taste sensitivities, where possible, provide foods and flavours specific to individuals' taste and texture needs. Be permissive of same foods. It's important to distinguish between sensory food needs and disordered eating. Providing ample information about food, providing multiple options for times and locations to eat, as well as providing the right sensory cutlery and crockery can help us to eat well on the ward. I, for one, couldn't drink out of a polystyrene cup. Smell. We may have strong smell preferences, extreme aversions to certain smells, or a need for specific smells that help calm or soothe. In order to help our smell sensitivities, where possible, provide or permit the use of essential oils and other smell-seeking adaptations like providing flowers, laundry detergents, or specific toiletries. Consider room or bed allocation regarding food smells. 3. Consent and autonomy. These are important for everyone. The dominant culture can sometimes assume neurodivergent people are not agentic autonomous beings just like neurotypical people. Additionally, being hospitalised can feel like our sovereignty and dignity is being challenged. Therefore, thinking about how to best champion our consent and autonomy can help us on the ward. Your language should be flexible and should match the preferences of the neurodivergent person that they use for themselves. In my instance, I prefer the use of gender-neutral pronouns, they and them, and I prefer identity-first language. Always ask before touching. Explain why you need to touch someone. Give as many choices as possible and as much warning as possible. I find it useful to know when I'll be touched again or when I'm next going to be weighed. Understand that consent can vary. Some days I can tolerate touch and others I cannot. Assume competence. Adopt the position of co-conspirator whose job is to be alongside us as curious team members working together in figuring out the tools and strategies that might help us in finding solutions to problems. Enable multiple choices and listen to our feedback. Be willing to let us try something and change our minds and maybe try it again. This affirms our agency. To conclude, these are just a few tools in a much broader neurodivergency affirming toolkit, but I hope adopting some of these will create meaningful change. If I could leave you with one thing, it would be to know that the paradigm shift starts with an internal shift to orient ourselves more compassionately towards each other, And when we do that, the rest follows. Thanks for listening. Bye.